Good afternoon. Welcome to the Diversion Authority Finance Committee meeting for August 24th, 2022. Don, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis.
Here.
Dr. Mahoney. Mr. Peterson.
I'm here.
Mr. Jacobson.
Here.
Ms. Gayhart.
Here.
Ms. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Redlinger.
Here.
Mr. Steen.
Here.
Mr. Pepcorn.
Here.
Mayor Carlson. Here. Mr. Reeds. Ms. Madriga.
Here.
The quorum is present.
Thank you, Don. First order of business is to approve the minutes of July 27th, 2022. They are in the attachment. They're on page 3, and they have been distributed.
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of July 27th, 2022 as distributed. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next order of business is to approve the order of the agenda. It has been distributed. It is in your packets.
Steen moves to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Steen. Is there a second, please?
Peterson second.
Thank you, Commissioner Peterson. It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as distributed. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 4 is the approval of the bills. Call on Ms. Terry Gerhardt for that report. Finance Director, City of Fargo.
The bills that have been received through August 16th total $2,014,000, the largest of which is from Cass County Joint Water Resource District. They are diversion bills totaling $1.7 million.
Are there any questions? The finance report is an actionable item that we can do with a voice.
Approval.
Approval bills. Approval bills. Excuse me.
Move to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Pipcorn. Been moved and seconded to approve the bills as presented by Ms. Gayhart. Is there any discussion? Don, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson.
Yes.
Ms. Gayhart.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger.
Yes.
Mr. Steen.
Yes.
Mr. Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mayor Carlson.
Yes.
Ms. Madriga.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you, Don. Next order of business is the finance report. Again, we call on Ms. Gayhart for that report.
Your net position rests at $149 million. It consists of $141 million of cash assets, $8 million of receivables and prepaid expense.
Are there any questions? Are there any questions? This is an actionable item. I need a motion, please.
I'll move to approve.
Jacobson, motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the finance report as presented by Ms. Gayhart. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 6 is the Executive Director's Financial Report. Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Finance Committee. On the first sheet here, we'll start with our revenue sources. Again, keep in mind that the sales tax numbers are about a 3-month delay. And so year to date, we're still tracking where we anticipate being, actually a bit more on the sales tax side than what we were anticipating. But everything looks good there. You can see the Fargo and the Cass County sales tax, and then you can see our draws from the state of North Dakota. The 50% match is still the Water Commission funds that we're drawing down, and then the legacy bond draw this month of $12.8 million. So certainly open for any questions on that.
Any questions for Mr. Paulson? Thank you, Thank you very much. Item number 7.
Oh,
Contracting.
sorry, Mr. Chair. I'll keep going with
my apologies.
my expenses too. So expenses, again, are looking on track. We're actually tracking to be under budget this year for our 2022 cash budget. Some of that is just ramping up the P3 side. That's happened just a tad slower than we had anticipated when we formulated the cash budget. Overall, though, things are all, for the most part, tracking under budget and as anticipated. Again, our large areas are the lands in impacted property mitigation. You can see 19 million to date. And then our other areas are non-construction costs. So those are engineering and program-related costs. And then the City of Fargo, River Stage 37 at the 4 million. And then, of course, our third-party MOU obligations at 8.5 million to date. I'll just quickly move through the level two.
I have a question if you want.
Sure.
Just on the expenditures, Joel, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but we've got a current year, budget of 195,000 basically. Spent to date about 44,000. Any idea where we're going to end up by the end of the year? I mean, we're substantially less than spending half of our budget, which is consistent with every other year that we've had. So I'm just curious as to what, if you guys are taking a look at the cash flows, where we're going to end up at, by the end of the year. Because I'm guessing there's no way we're going to spend another 144 million.
No, I'm not anticipating that, Commissioner Steen, and you're correct. When we put together the 22 cash budget, we obviously anticipated that the developer would be moving into NTP2 much quicker than we saw, and so as construction ramps up, we will be spending more money just because there's more activity, more things going on. A lot of the ambiguity in budgeting comes down into our lands program too. Whether we close the deal for property or if it continues to drag on through quick take or eminent domain processes really impacts what our assumptions were. And so even though we are closing a number of deals and the lands program is making a lot of progress, we're still behind where we thought we were going to be for the year on the lands program as well. So I don't want to venture to take a crystal ball view, but I don't think we will meet our budget this year. We will be significantly under budget just because of those changing overall macro dynamics of the program and where we're at today. But again, I don't see any concerns in any particular budget area. Really, if we don't spend it this year, it's going to be moved into next year.
So we've carried over. I'm
That's
just
right.
curious. That affects our borrowing, obviously. When we go into the WIFIA loan or borrow any other funds, so that should be saving us some money as well.
That's right. Right now we have significant cash available through the legacy funds and still the State Water Commission dollars, and then the sales tax coming in above expectations as well. So we haven't been making draws on the WIFIA loan. That'll more than likely come in later years when we're making the milestone payments to the P3 developer as whole pieces of infrastructure comes online and we start making those transactions. So yeah, it's obviously a bit frustrating, but that we're not progressing some of these things as fast as we anticipated, but. Overall, there's no concerns. We still are looking at our baseline schedule of permanent flood protection in 27. There's just some things that didn't hit this year that we thought we're going to, and so they'll be moved into next year's budgeting process. So.
All right, thanks.
With regard to Commissioner Steen's question on pages on our packet this month, pages 29 and 30, has a summary of all of the land expenses from the beginning to date, obviously July 31st, and we're at $332,714,793. So that gives you an idea of how we've moved along in the specific areas of which those dollars were spent. Please continue, Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll again, this month, I'll quickly move through level 2 detail, but please stop me if there's any questions on any of the particular line items. But we did break out in this format the macro level line items into more individual ones. So again, here you can see the program management much lower than what we anticipated, and that's because the P3 hasn't, they're just ramping up into full-scale construction now. We were anticipating a whole year of that, and so that's significantly under budget. And then you move down to the River Stage 37 projects, which are really the City of Fargo projects, where we've been expending some resources this year. That seems on track to reach our budget this year. And then moving into the lands and impacted property mitigation, we've line itemed out the different areas. Nothing of concern there. We're still actively working and moving forward and trying to acquire all the property rights that we need. We're just behind where we had anticipated on our budget this year. On the next page, you can see the engineering design program management fees for the year. Again, same story there, under budget because the P3 has taken a bit more time to ramp up into full-scale construction here. And then you can see our third-party MOU and mitigation, which is a significant expense for us this year, but that too is still under budget. So I'll move into this last part of the level 2 detail here. Again, here's our expenses overall. This includes, overall program level. So right now, expenditures to date are around $820 million. And you can kind of see where we're at here to date with the overall budget. And then on the next page is the authority operations. Before the meeting, Commissioner Steen and I had a discussion. He had a question about, the salary budget being significantly lower than where the benefits are. And as I reviewed this, Commissioner Steen, I have an answer for you. We did anticipate having 2 additional full-time employees starting at the beginning of this year. One of those was our senior construction manager, who we just hired last month. And we are moving forward with advertising and interviewing right now for a land specialist to help Ms. Jody Smith on our lands program as well. Those 2 positions were anticipated to be hired at the beginning of the year, but because of where we're at with the program, we waited until where we're at now, and so the budget will be under budget for our salaries, but the benefits then are probably more in line with what the baseline benefits for the authority were going to be.
Okay. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, that's all I have to report for my financial report this month. Certainly available for any additional questions if the committee has any.
Any questions for Mr. Paulson? Thank you. Moving on to item 7, the contracting action. Again, Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have 3 contracting actions for your consideration this month. The first one is a new master service agreement with Watson Associates. We have been working with Watson Associates for many years. They are currently in the development of our crop insurance program, as well as some other mitigation requirements. Their previous MSA was up, so this is really just re-upping their contract through 2025. Zero cost, just a master service agreement at this time for your consideration. The second item is Task Order 101 Amendment 4 for HMG. Majority of this cost is really related to the design and the design of protection around the Cass Rural Water Facility. And as this committee might be aware, that was a facility that was being considered to be moved out of the upstream mitigation area. By moving it out of the upstream mitigation area, it caused quite significant impacts to their system, and so we looked at a number of alternatives. Ultimately, we were able to determine that the lowest cost option was to keep the facility in place and protect it with a ring levee. And so this would be for the design of that system, as well as some mobility improvements within Cass County, 38th Street and 52nd Avenue, which we're anticipated with the program anyways. This would just be a contract amount to design and move forward with those projects as well. The third contracting action is Task Order 2 Amendment 0 for Red River Valley Cooperative Power. And this is to replace a power line around the southern embankment on the Minnesota side to provide power to properties that are going to stay and be located on the unprotected side. So this allows us to not have to go over the southern embankment, and we're actually going around. It's a much cheaper option, and it also provides power to a few residences that will be remaining in that area. So certainly open for any questions, Mr. Chair.
Questions for Mr. Paulson? On any one of the three? Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Paulson, I would say this because I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's in here somewhere. But as I look at the HMG contract, the percentage of their fee appears to be rather hefty, and I'm sure I'm wrong. So could you tell me how and why I'm wrong?
So just wanted to clarify the question. So are you meaning their fee in relation to the cost of the overall project?
Yep. As I see the scope, I'm seeing it at just under 20 million.
Okay. So
I'm sure I'm wrong, but just educate me, please.
No, I think it'd be best if we brought up Mr. Bachegard. He worked with HMG on this, and he might be able to answer with some more specificity to meet your question.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Peterson. Yeah, that contract included two different scopes of work. One was for some work for Cass County, and one was for the scope of work for the Casserole water wells. So yeah, when you add those two together, I think you get close to that $20 million. In round numbers, most designs are between 5 and 10%. This is a little bit unique in that it's the protection and the readjusting of all the Casserole water well infrastructure. So it's a little more complicated design than what would be the typical. I think if you looked at the percentage for the work on the Cass County side, it was a little bit more in line with what at least I was typically used to seeing. The other one was a little bit higher than a typical percentage, but mostly due to those staging and a little more complicated construction.
Okay, so it's a combination of the two packages that I'm not seeing. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And I'll also add to Mr. Bachegard's response. The Casserole Water would have had the option of hiring their own engineer to design this as well, and us work with them. We felt it was more cost prohibitive for us to do that work as the authority, since we're closely related with the Corps' work, and we can coordinate that much more efficiently than having another engineer come in and start designing and coordinating with
independent of
us. Right.
Yep. Got it. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any additional questions for Mr. Paulson on any one of the three contract actions? All right. This is an actionable item.
Move to approve all three of them.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there a second, please?
Peterson, second.
Thank you, Commissioner. Been moved and seconded to approve the contracting actions, items 1, 2, and 3, as presented by Mr. Paulson. Is there any further discussion? Don, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson.
Yes.
Ms. Gayhart.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger.
Yes.
Mr. Steen.
Yes.
Mr. Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mayor Carlson.
Yes.
Ms. Madriga.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you, Don. Next order of business is item number 8, is the Metro Flood Diversion Authority 2021 Audit Report Acceptance of Findings. We'll call on Ide Bailey on Zoom, and I believe Jamie Fay is on the line with us.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Just fine, thank you.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to go ahead and screen share. I'm going to pull up the report. If you've got a copy of it, you can follow along loosely. We don't have much for a formal presentation. on this one, but we're just going to step through a few pages of the report and kind of talk through it. So, as you said, I'm Jamie Fay. I'm the audit partner on the Diversion Authority's audit for really since inception. This year, we're talking about December 31st, 2021. So that's what we have up on the screen here. We worked with the authority and everyone involved to get the audit done, got it done on time and ready to go. So we'll step through just a few high-level things. If you have questions, feel free to stop me and ask. So first and foremost, everybody wants to know the opinion. So we come in and do an audit. That means we look at a selection of things. So a handful of transactions. We do a handful of calculations to get to, hey, we think a balance should be this. Is it close to that? If not, why? So we do a number of different procedures to get to our opinion, and we provide an opinion on if the financial statements are materially accurate or not. The authority received a clean, unmodified opinion. That's what you want, and that's what you've gotten in the past. So that's really what the auditor's report is saying. There's a bunch of language in there that's standard, but at a high level, that's kind of the cliff notes. So then next up is the statement of net position. So this really talks about what do you have as far as cash, some payables. What do you have? What does the authority have? So there's about 148 million in total assets. That includes things like cash, accounts receivable, receivables that you have. And then for liabilities, there's about 55 million as of end of year in liabilities. That a significant portion of those liabilities is that settlement payable that's out there. And there is some detail on that in the future, but that's one I wanted to point out because that is a pretty big number as far as the total of those liabilities. So then the next statement in here is the statement of activities. This really is kind of what a lot of people will call the income statement. So what did you get for revenues? What did you spend? Total change in net position, we'll make it a little bigger here, is about 57 million positive change. So that left that ending net position of about 93 million. So once you got in what you had and then spent out what you spent for 2021, that's where you ended up. Any questions on these first two schedules? Okay. The next couple of these are the fund statements. So they look a little bit different because they don't include any of the long-term items. That's just the way that government reporting happens. So it's a little different, but kind of the same look and feel. You had about 148 million of assets, and then those liabilities are down a little bit because it doesn't include that $40 million settlement. So fund balance at the end of the year was just under 100 million there. And then the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. This is just the kind of quote unquote income statement that goes with those other fund statements. Net change is a positive 30 million. So brought that fund balance up to just under 100 million there. So those are really the numbers. And we talk about the numbers a little bit because that's really what's the meat and the potatoes here. But what I wanted to touch on were kind of those other things, like what are kind of those other things that happened? Were there any findings? Was there anything noted in the audit? Those are the questions that we get a lot. So the page I'll point you to is page 22. It's the footnote on the settlement liability. So if you have any questions about what that number looks like, that detail is in here. So the way that gets recorded is it's a liability for 40 million that will be paid per the amortization schedule, but then also interest is accrued every year on that balance. So that's where that big number is coming from. So that was the one footnote that I wanted to point out because that is a little bit, that's kind of the big number on there. And then the last part is the findings. So the two findings that came up this year, we call them material journal entries and preparation of financial statements. So what that means is the first one, material journal entries. That means that Bailey, when we were preparing the financial statements and the audit, we came across a couple of things that said, hey, we need to make a journal entry here to get this to be materially accurate. So we proposed a journal entry that got posted. So the financial statements are materially accurate. We just have to point out the fact that we made a journal entry or proposed a journal entry to make that happen. The second one is called preparation of financial statements. What that means is Bailey prepared your financials. In the past, that has been done by the City of Fargo finance staff. So that's why these look a little different than they did last year. They're new. Because when you hire an outside party, we have to give that finding because there wasn't anybody that was able to do that internally at the authority. These two findings are very common in governments. I work exclusively in the government world and I see these findings a lot. So we didn't find anything that was like, oh, they spent the money in the wrong place or they spent it on something they shouldn't have. These were just two items that we needed to report. So I wanted to step through those. And with the exception of those items, there wasn't anything else that stuck out as far as needing to be discussed or disclosed. So if you have any questions, I will take those.
Thank you, Ms. Fay. Are there any questions? Finance Committee? It doesn't appear that we have any questions. Thank you.
That sounds great. If anything comes up, feel free to reach out. We really appreciate everybody's help in getting the audit done timely and look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you very much. This is an actionable item that we have to approve the audit report. A motion, please.
Steen moves to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Steen. Is there a second, please?
Peterson, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Peterson. Moved and seconded to approve the Metro Flood Diversion Authority 2021 audit report and its findings as presented by Ide Bailey. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Don, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis.
Yes?
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson.
Yes.
Ms. Gayhart. Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger.
Yes.
Mr. Steen.
Yes.
Mr. Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mayor Carlson.
Yes.
Ms. Madriga.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you, Don. Our next meeting is September 21st, and Don has passed on a note to me that that meeting will have to be at 3 p.m. because of a conflict here at in this facility, or we do it by Zoom, but it's always most desirable to try and have it in person if we can. So September 21st, the meeting will be at 3 p.m. rather than 4, and on November 16th. We have a conflict with both days. So I see some people nodding their heads. I'm hoping that that will coincide with your schedules and the like. So again, September 21st at 3 p.m. and November 16th at 3 p.m. Does any member of the Finance Committee have anything else they'd like to bring forward at this time?
Oh, I would just request, Chair, that if Don could just set up updated meeting. Thank you.
No one? Staff, anything? All right, we stand adjourned. Thank you.